It's nice. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, the same. I was listening to you when I was out with the kids just an hour ago.
Oh,
So yeah, I usually play an intro, but I decided it's too long, so just start talking right away. So
all
hello,
right.
Lindsay. How are you,
Hello.
and who are you?
I am really good today. I've just had a huge sort of couple days of clearing and healing, so I'm feeling uplifted and open and good, and that's nice. And who am I is a really good question. It would take a long time to answer. Do you have about, I don't know, a couple months? Or I'm a lot of things, and I don't know, most currently I am a practicing shamanic healer. I'm an author. I'm the host of Rogue Ways and Middle Path shows. And I work with people one-on-one in various ways, not just with shamanic healing, but also just with their spiritual path and with their life goals for their soul, heart, mind, and body, and various healing modalities as well, and tarot readings and oracles, and connecting to their guides and allies and bringing the medicine through, the healing through, but also the messages through that they needed to hear or receive in that time. So there's a lot going on, actually.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when I listened to your podcast today, and you had Catherine O'Shea. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And she, as I understand it, she was channeling someone else and got some message that she read or something like that.
Yeah, we both were. It was a show for her, though, so she was the one sharing the message mostly. We both channel. We do it in slightly different ways, and for slightly different aims, or there's just different things that we're both sort of better at, I guess. But yeah, last night she was channeling, and what did she end up bringing through? It was the blackbird. It was a blackbird. So she works with a lot of animals more often, animal guides, as well as our living animal companions and pets, as well as our animal companions and pets who have passed on. And she works mostly channeling those beings. I channel more. It tends to be people's guides and allies, which sometimes is what, I don't know, people will call them ascended masters, angels, Buddhas, saints, and all kinds of things, but they also will be animals sometimes, often actually. So so we both do a little bit different of that. And we were doing that last night to prepare for our event coming up. It's an event that I put on every solstice and equinox. And I always invite Catherine because she's just one of my favorite people in the world. And she's so beautiful and good at what she does. And so this is this Sunday. I don't know when the show's coming out or if people will even have a chance to maybe come, but it's an all-day virtual event. So no matter where in the world you are, you can have access to it. And it's called One Day of Brightness. And we all gather together and we create a field of love and intentional connection with source and heaven. And we channel that through and create a field that is really healing and uplifting for people. But we also get really practical knowledge too. So Catherine and I kind of hold down the spiritual side of things, channeling things and setting up the field and making sure everyone is deeply connected to that. And then I usually bring in a few master teachers or practitioners of various traditions or faiths or practices. So to this Sunday, we have an astrologer, Robert Phoenix, and he's going to help us interpret various aspects of our charts that aren't always touched on by most astrologers, as well as tying that into the sort of cosmology of the world and what's going on and what's coming up in it. And then we also have Elizabeth Prescott, who is an acupuncturist and traditional Chinese medicine practitioner, and she's going to help us, work with the different acupuncture points on our bodies to practice sort of reflexology and other things as well. So it's kind of a well-rounded day it ends up being, and it's always really beautiful and exciting. So that's part of why Catherine was on last night, was to help promote that and invite people to that event.
So it's a live event. I understand it as a Zoom event because I was out playing, so I didn't hear everything. I was like, okay, you're doing something.
It is via Zoom and it is live.
Okay.
Yeah, but it is also recorded, so people can't make it the whole day.
How do you do the acupuncture or whatever it's called? The needles.
She's not doing acupuncture. No, okay. She's teaching people about their acupuncture points, which you don't have to use needles with. You can just touch them, for example, and the energy is still bridged and or released. You can also use magnets, and you can also use anything that is has a point on it. You can use crystals, you can use a pen, you can use anything you want. So the needle practice is to apply it and hold it there in that pattern. So if you've ever done acupuncture, they put needles in various places and you sit there for usually 15 minutes. I always ask my acupuncturist if I can do half an hour or more, because I really go into a deep meditation during that time. And that's the point of the needle, is that it stays. But some people actually don't even use, some acupuncturists don't even use needles. They just use the magnets and they set them on that place with a little bit of sticky so that it sticks, so that they don't puncture at all. And you still have the same effect.
Okay. That's new to me. I knew about the needles, but okay.
Yeah, so if somebody wanted to learn how to apply that themselves and not go to an acupuncturist, they would enjoy Elizabeth's presentation, because that's her goal, is to help us do it for ourselves.
That's awesome. And the next thing, but you kind of brought it up already, but you said you have different religions or spiritual viewings. So as if you are a Christian and you go, are you going to feel like you're going to talk to demons? Or
I mean, if you're a Christian, if you're a Christian who thinks you're going to talk to demons, then yes, you will probably feel that way. Are we going to talk to demons? No. So, I mean, I'm a Christian and I don't think I'm summoning or talking to demons when I'm talking to people's guides and allies of various traditions. And so it just depends on who you are. I would say if you're attracted to it and it calls to you, then you would enjoy it. And if you think about it and you go, God, that sounds awful, then you probably wouldn't want to come.
Yeah, because I got a message from a family member today, actually, an older lady, and she was talking about, she went India, I think it was, and she was looking at some Buddhist, maybe it was, channeling their gods, and she said she saw Satan, and he came up to her, and I was like, okay. So
yeah, I think a lot of people project that onto things they experience. I've had actual demonic encounters, and it's really easy to tell the difference between demons and angels. Like, really easy. So it just depends, and there's a lot of people who do spiritual work of every supposed tradition who are channeling negative entities and energies, and they don't even always know it. And so that happens too. So you do want to have discernment, right? I would never, ever just go into someone's like spiritual house or church or mosque or whatever without first having some sort of understanding of what the people who were there were actually doing, what their intentions were, what their practices were, and feeling that out for myself. It would be highly stupid to connect with someone, for example, who is channeling something or is doing any kind of spiritual work and not have any discernment about that. It would be equally as stupid for someone to pick up a spiritual practice and have no discernment about that. For example, I teach a lot of different sort of meditations and spiritual practices, and I don't give all of them to everybody because not everybody's ready for them. And when I've learned those from teachers, I have gone through many layers of discernment before I even learned from that teacher, and my own inner discernment for if this is good for me or not. And so, it's a dangerous world spiritually if you are completely naive to the possibilities. And that's actually how I had one of my strongest, most powerful demonic encounters myself. Was I just dove into tarot without having any idea what it was or what it could do or whether I believed in it or not or respected it or not. And that's exactly what you don't want to do. You don't want to go into anything blind or ignorant.
Yeah. So how did you handle that? Because she said she was praying to Jesus and telling as she was seeing Satan, she said, and she called on her husband and told him to come outside and look at this, and he didn't see anything.
Yeah.
So how do you do if you get a demon? Do you invoke something, or do you just have to live with it for a while, or how do you handle that?
Jesus is a great one. That's also how I went about my first demonic encounter and attack, was calling on Jesus, although I didn't understand that right away because that wasn't something I believed in. Even though I had gone to church my whole childhood, I didn't do it as an act of faith. I did it as a really fun community. I loved singing. I loved how happy people were. I've always been deeply connected to that sort of spiritual side of myself where I enjoy connectedness and love and joy and happiness. And I want to see more of that in the world. And so I liked church because it was that, right? And I had cookies too, which was awesome. So I didn't care what Jesus or God was to people. It didn't matter to me. I had my own spiritual connection. And I look back now and I know I was always talking to God or heaven or source or whatever you want to call these things. But I didn't know that at the time. And the more I'm also exceptionally logical and very materialist sort of mind as well. I'm a skeptic, actually. And people who first encounter me don't think that, because it's been a long, long ride for me. And I've come through many, many things to find truth. But I start from a place of disbelief, and I have to prove to myself, or someone has to prove to me, that something exists. So Jesus and God were not something that was really in my mind when this happened. But it terrified me deeply. And it was definitely very real. There were objects moving around my house. There was my dog could sense this thing as well. The first and only time I ever heard him growl in 18 years of his life was when this demonic presence approached me, and he saw and felt it and growled at it. So there was all this evidence I had, right? My logical mind couldn't deny the evidence. There's objects moving of their own accord. My dog is growling at this thing that I can feel physically. It became colder. I got goose flesh. I could feel just the hateful energy, like something wanted to kill me. And all of this I couldn't deny. And so my logical mind finally was swayed that something real was going on. And there was a direct moment of attack that culminated and was especially oppressive and hateful and terrifying. And after that, other people could see it on me. So it had attacked me, and it didn't possess me, we'll say, but it was like attached. It was like around me, like it was not going anywhere. And other people who had known me for my entire life looked at me after that and would go, whoa, like, what's wrong with you? And they would react in this way. So now I have that evidence too. So the only people I knew in the whole world who believed in things like demons and angels and that sort of spiritual, supernatural stuff were these very fundamentalist Christians. They would hate what I'm doing now, by the way. They would hate it. they would say it is satanic. But at the time, they were really helpful for me. I'm so blessed and glad that I knew them, because I went to them and I told them what was happening. And without flinching, they're like, yep, you have a demonic attack. You have a demonic attachment. And I was like, well, okay. I mean, if that's true, like, what do we do about it? And they were like, first, pray to Jesus. And I was like, cool, I'll do anything. Like, this is horrifying. Like, this is terrifying. This is like out of a horror movie. And I can't really even understand if I'm in real life or not anymore. And so I did the Jesus prayer with them, and I invited Jesus into my heart, and I will never, ever forget it, because in that exact instant, from head to toe, I had pure peace, pure, unfiltered peace. And I can't express that feeling to anyone, but I almost guarantee that most people haven't felt it. It blew me away. It wasn't just the juxtaposition of having just had this demonic energy all around me for months and months and months, but also this pure, filled feeling of just heavenly energy and just love. And it was so powerful. And that was the beginning of erasing that demon out of my life. It definitely wasn't gone yet, right? I now had this personal protection, right? I had this direct connection to heaven and this personal connection and power, and that is necessary, I think. And Jesus is a great one. Anybody can call on Jesus. Jesus will help you in a moment. Whatever we think of that, it doesn't even matter. I don't even care. Is he a guy that actually lived? Who cares? Right? Is he like some ascended master in heaven? I don't care. What I do know is it seems very likely that morphogenetic fields are real. Rupert Sheldrake goes into this. Many scientists go into this idea of morphogenetic fields, and that our consciousness actually affects reality. And enough humans over enough centuries have loved Jesus and called it Jesus and thought of Jesus in this way that it just has that energy. So it could be a man who died for our sins, and it could be a guy who's in heaven now with his wings, and it could be this morphogenetic field, and it could be all three, and I don't care. It's like very effective. So if you ever needed to, and you found yourself in a place where there was demonic energy around, call on it. Like it'll come, you'll feel it, and you'll know. So I did that, and I love that energy. And to your answer your question, yes, that would be a start. That wasn't nearly the end of it, but it was a great start.
Yeah. When you talked about the feeling of evil, that's something that I'm a little familiar with, because I have sleeping paralysis from time to time, and the things that show up are pure evil.
Yes, they are.
I can't explain what you feel, but it's like bone chilling fear from the things you see. And the last time, because I've talked about this with Nate from Reality Star, I have Stockholm syndrome with those demons for some reason. So I get, when I don't have it for a half year or something, I get like, I want to do it again. And I try to invoke them. And the last time I did, and I asked to bring a contract, and they did, because I'm stupid, I guess.
I mean, there's something more than that going on, but okay.
But that time before it came in 6 figures, and they had my girlfriend with them. Something came from behind and touched me, and that was like my whole body just froze. But I managed, when I saw that she was with them, it canceled for some reason. I was like, nope, not doing that.
You have enough love for her, but not yourself, is what you're saying. You have enough love for her to want her to be protected, but you don't love yourself enough to protect you.
Maybe.
So what about this idea that seems true, that these things can travel along family lines, and so by you accepting them or making contracts or deals with them or inviting them, you're then also cursing your children to deal with this for their
I've never heard about that.
Yeah, that's often where they come from, is our genetic line, our ancestral karma, or our parents and what they invited in.
Okay, so that's no fun.
Yeah, so that's a good reason to get rid of them.
Yeah, I haven't tried since I asked that time. I had one night, because I get it's a sound that starts you. Yeah. And then you're okay, it's coming.
I've had it for years myself as well.
Yeah. So then I sat up in the bed and just like, okay. And it went away, and I went back to sleep.
So what they would not want you to do, what they would most not want you to do, because to not experience sleep paralysis does not necessarily mean that those entities have detached from you. So just because you don't experience that for a while doesn't mean they're gone. And I shouldn't even say if, because we know they're feeding off of you, that's what they're doing. That's what sleep paralysis is, right? It's just a more direct version of it. Succubus, incubus, and all these different sorts of vampiric, parasitic energy. They're feeding off of your fear. They're feeding off of your hate. They're feeding off of even when you feel apathetic about it, it's because they've sucked all of your emotion out and you don't have anything left to feel. So they're feeding off of this. They would like to create more of that from you. They'd love to transfer down into your children. God forbid. And what they would not want you to do is to kick them out and to have boundaries against them and to say, no, you can't come into me, my family, my girlfriend, my house. This is mine. It's my space. I protect it with the light, with love, with God, whatever you like, with Ganesh. It doesn't even matter what or who, right? It is just actually that vibration of love and truth. That is what God is. That is what source is. That is what these ascended masters or higher beings are. Is they're just a more purified form of love and truth. They've just accomplished that in themselves. When you see somebody who's a human still living, walking around, and you just feel that, you're like, wow, that person's just like like glowing or something. Like there's just something about them. It's because they hold so much love and truth. And that doesn't mean they have to be love and light and like fairies or whatever. It's just this quality of self that people have, right? So you can create more of that in yourself, in your home. You can invite it in via those types of beings. Again, I'm a big fan of Jesus, but it could be, so many of them are so good at this. And to hold that intention and that light in your space, and that intention that you're not allowing anything else in anymore. They would hate that, because then they wouldn't have access to you anymore, and they would still try to find ways in, and you may have to over time again and again remind them that this is the boundary and that they are outside of it and you are inside of it with your love and your light connection. But eventually it does go.
Okay, yeah, maybe I should do something about it. I've never really thought about it with somebody that actually gambles in this world with spiritual things, so I've never really thought about it. I just think it's weird that I have these things coming from time to time.
Well, I look at sleep paralysis as a spiritual battle in action. That first demonic encounter that I was just talking about, preceded by that was a year or so of sleep paralysis. I have never had it since then. And that's very telling. I've never once had it since then. So I had a year of it increasing. It culminated in a very direct attack upon me. And then I started cleansing myself and inviting in the light and making better boundaries. And it never, ever happened again. So that's for me, again, very good evidence that this is a spiritual encounter that's happening. And it's something like, so 10% of the population experiences sleep paralysis or so. Something like 80% of those people have it culminate in this direct experience. You've had that experience multiple times where you actually see and feel the entities involved.
Yes.
And that's pretty rare, actually. So 80% of people will eventually have something like that. You've had it multiple times. And I mean 80% of the 10% of the population who even experiences it at all.
Yes, it was when it first started, I had them almost every night for 2 months. They were very frequent, almost every night. And then it went away, and it started coming like once a half a year or something. And now it's maybe once half a year now. So it's been decreasing, at least.
Well, it's up to you, obviously, but because that you invited it. I mean, at least recently, maybe not at the beginning. In some way, actually, we all have to invite it. It can't come in. Otherwise, it's exactly like a vampire in that way. And demonic energies are like that. So are the angelic energies. You have to choose and you have to do the inviting. You have to allow it. But more recently, you at least know that you consciously invited it in. That makes it a little bit harder to get rid of, not going to lie. Like when you consciously invite something to happen, it's a little bit more, it just has that, just like you could think of this even when you look at like your friends and your family. Think of the friends who you're like, I didn't really like them, but like, they're really persistent and they just keep coming over. And so I'll just let them be in there. In fact, I'll invite them into my house. Well, now once you've invited them in, it's a lot harder to just say to them, like, look, we're not actually friends. Stop talking to me. Like it's a lot easier if you never invited them in the first place to eventually be like, yeah, I'm just going to sort of fade into the background and you'll go your way and I'll go mine. It's similar, right? So the invitation has been made, but that doesn't mean it can't be undone. And you then know the power of inviting because you can see the reaction to it. It happened again. And so you can see the power of inviting the good as well. And it's your choice. Like if you want to just keep doing it and see what happens, then that's what you do. If you don't want to, then you do that. You get to decide. So it's not something that's just happening to you. It is something you are co-creating.
Yeah, now when you put it that way, because it started because one night I was lying in the bed flat on my back and my hands and my feet lifted up. So I almost started flying.
Levitated. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, that's such a good feeling. So I tried that over and over again to make it happen. And one night it just froze and I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. Well, so they seem to, because you can do things like astral projection and levitation and these types of things, and you can do them very safely. You can also do them just like we were talking about before, ignorantly, naively, and then there's a lot out there in the universe. And so a lot can happen. And if you're not intentional, if you're not conscious of and intentional about it, then it will happen to you instead of you creating it as it would be best to do, right? As it would be safer. But what seems to happen a lot is that when people reach a sort of new spiritual experience or gift or ability, it's like, if you can imagine in the spiritual plane, in one of them at least, there's a lot, it's just a vast expanse of like darkness, and all of like the people down here doing stuff are just really dim gray in the darkness. And then someone, you know, almost starts to levitate and their light like explodes. Well, now a bunch of entities know exactly where you are. They're like, ooh, look at that. That's a good food source. That thing's just throwing off light into the abyss, and I can just go eat that up. Right? So it's interesting that those two things coincided, because it does seem really often in my experience with the people who I work with and with my own experiences, that when you have that new level of spiritual experience, you are noticed more by things, good and bad, good, bad, and neutral.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I will try to do something about this, but let's go back to your practice, because you're taking good intentions. And how do you do this when because I'm every time it happens, I'm going to sleep. Just before I'm going to sleep, something happens.
Yeah.
Can you just sit here right now and just invoke something to come and talk to you? And do you see it, or do you just feel it?
I could right now do that. I'm not going to do it on a show, but I do that with people when I work with them one-on-one, and I do it on my own. And I both see it and feel it, and sort of hear it, but it's not the same as hearing, you know, you right now, right? Like, it's a little bit different than that. But all of those things are true. They're a little bit different than what people might expect. Like, I don't see a physical being standing in front of me, right? Like, I would see you if you were standing in front of me. I don't see that. There have been times in my life where I have been blessed enough to see physical representations of some of these energies, physical seeming, I'll say, because even then I don't think it was actually physical. I just think it can appear that way if it chooses to. And I think that's a bit more rare. So yeah, and anybody can. I'll just add that. Like, I'm not special. I'm more practiced in it. It's been my whole life that I've been heading this way and doing these things and connecting to these energies, but every single human being has that as their birthright, right? That's in you. That is what you are connected to that. So we are also very heavily cut off from that intentionally by the parasites that would like to believe they run this world, right? Through like fluoride in the water and other things to keep us sort of repressed and suppressed and just dumb and vacant and unintentional and disconnected. So it can be harder sometimes to get back to it. We actually have like so much to work through and to clear out of the way, which is why most of what I teach is that clearing and that healing, so that we can all get a little bit closer to that, what's already in us and what we're already connected to.
Yeah, that's what Jesus said. When someone asked how we do stuff, he was like, you can do it too. You just have to believe.
You have to believe, you have to know it, and you have to choose it and move towards it. And then you have to be committed to it. Because actually, and I teach this too, every one of my students experiences it as well. As soon as you sort of decide and choose and start moving that way, things will seem to come and get in your way. And it's not even necessarily like it is like the darkness trying to stop you, although it definitely feels that way. It actually is these I hate to call it a test too, because it's not really a test, but it's like are you sure about that? Like, are you really serious about it? Because here's this thing that when this thing came up in your life last time, you went and you got super drunk, right? So what are you going to do this time? Here's the thing again. What are you going to do? And so there's this series of challenging situations that force you to recommit and choose again and keep choosing and keep choosing and keep choosing. And honestly, I wouldn't want it any other way, because otherwise any random asshole could just suddenly be like, oh, I'm God, and just start levitating things, and like, who knows what they would do, right? It'd be chaos. So I'm glad that our souls in this life, and this material linear life, seem to have these inbuilt mechanisms of sort of challenge that we overcome. And what's always true when we face these challenges is that we heal more and more of ourselves out along the way, right? And so we release like these emotions we've been holding on to, this traumas that we've experienced, and these bad sort of orientations we've developed, bad habits we've developed, and they all just start to fall away. So we get clearer and brighter, we feel better and better, and all of this is great. So that's definitely a side effect of choosing that, to remember what you actually are, is to release all of the things that you never were.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm gonna go a bit off to another topic because I think you can answer this. I've tried to ask it from other people, but some people tell me when I'm listening to Sam Tripoli, he's saying it most every show, but he doesn't really explain it. It's a spiritual war we are in. And I heard someone say, I wrote it down, we are in a spiritual war. The final battle is between now and 2025, when Pluto enter Aquarius. What does that mean? I have no idea.
Yeah. I'm not a super expert on the astrology and Pluto entering Aquarius, but I did just talk to Robert Phoenix about it, so it's a little fresher in my mind. That Pluto is like our dark side, our underside, our like forgotten, our subconscious, whatever's deep down in there. And so it would be coming up sort of to be seen finally and dealt with finally. So even that you could look at as sort of like a spiritual battle, right? Because no matter what you think, what forces may or may not exist outside of you, inside of you is definitely a spiritual battle. You're always deciding, just like with your sleep paralysis, like, do I want this or that? Do I want to go that way or this way? Is it easier? It's easier to just sit back and like eat pizza on the couch, or well, I just want to go on a walk actually because my body needs it and it feels good, right? Like there's always a battle going on between like left and right, good or bad, whatever. What are you going to create and choose? So Pluto coming up anytime is bringing some of that with it. Like, why would you choose to sit on the couch and eat pizza if you know it makes you feel bad? You know you're gonna like, feel bloated and gross later, and then like tomorrow you're gonna cry because you're still fat and ugly or whatever. Like, I'm talking about myself here. So we all have that sort of battle going on. Pluto in Aquarius for all of us, though, that's collectively. What's in our collective unconscious, subconscious mind? What's in humanity's dark box of secrets, right? And that's going to be coming up to be dealt with. And we could look at the spiritual battle as that anyways. Again, whether you believe in heaven and hell, which I don't really, I use them as they're really beautiful and proper metaphors. But what's actually going on is this process, right? Is that all of humanity has to face this collective trauma that we've created together. And we're either going to face it and go, yeah, let's actually deal with that. Let's take the walk and let's like, brush off the dust and the dirt and let's actually like build our muscles and become stronger. Or we're going to go, no, let's stay in the dark a little bit longer and let's suffer and just like hate ourselves and continue to get fatter and uglier because we don't want to deal with that. It's way too hard. So that's kind of that energy in Pluto and Aquarius that's coming up. Aquarius is also this big, often it's about technology and change and transformation into a completely sort of new era of almost like, I want to say like meta connectedness. It was like the opposite of subconscious. It's like the meta conscious, like everybody's conscious of everything. And we see that happening more and more just with the whole world. Even if you just look at like the internet, right? We've all sort of finally seen like, yep, everywhere in the world has the same problems. Everywhere in the world is full of humans doing the same types of things, good and bad and neutral. This is not, no one's different from anyone else. And there's no more secrets really. All the secret societies, we know about them. All of the secret hidden spiritual traditions, we know them now. They're online. You can go find them. There's no secret hidden practices anymore. Those are all online. Like we have everything available to us now. And so we're also dealing with that. We can't hide anywhere anymore. So collectively as a humanity, we're facing that. What are we going to choose together? And some people can't even handle that we are actually all together. We're actually all here together, no matter whether you like it or not, like the good, the bad, and the neutral. So we have to come to grips with that. We have to say to ourselves, yeah, I'm a human being on Earth. And collectively, here's all the shit we need to deal with. I need to deal with it too. Even if I think it's none of it. I didn't go eat babies in a secret satanic dungeon somewhere, but I still have to deal with that. Right? I have to help clean that up. And that, I think, is a lot of what this like final battle and this time of reckoning and this spiritual war really is. I think it would be naive, and I think it would be ignorant to assume that there are not negative and evil players in this. We know there are on the human realm. We know there are. Like Klaus Schwab, like, come on, that guy's evil. Like, he's just darkness, right? It would be silly to not think there would be the equivalent in the spiritual realm. So there's that level of the spiritual war, in my opinion, too. But no matter where people are at, they can look at some level of this and see it happening, right? You can be completely atheist, materialist, and still see like, wow, humanity's got to get its shit together, right? Or you could be deep in the spiritual side of it and go like, yeah, there's literally like a war in heaven for souls, for the soul of humanity. And it's the same thing. It's just being reflected on every level that you can look at. So that's my interpretation of it and my explanation of it. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, it is, and it's clarifies a few things that I've been thinking about the past 2 years when they came out with the Great Reset. Because when he did that, every other political elite came out and also said exactly what they're doing and wasn't shy about it. They was proud about it. And I was like, how come? Because the past 1,000 years, they wrote it down in a book, put it in a drawer, and then some guy found it 500 years later, and he was like, holy shit. But now they're having a YouTube channel and meetings online. So I'm like, so they're really like, this is going down. You need to fight us now, or we will take you down with us. And
yeah, and it's crazy because you would think like, aren't you ashamed? Don't you want to keep hiding this? Like, that is not something that I would go out and just show people, but they are. And part of why they do that is actually really smart. And part of why they do that is because humans have Stockholm syndrome in general, is because they actually have to have your permission. They have to have your invitation, just like we talked about with the sleep paralysis thing or any other aspect of contact with the good or the bad, the dark or the light, the harmonic or the disharmonic, right? The angelic or the demonic. You have to choose. They cannot be in connection with you unless you choose. You have free will. That is the meaning of free will. It don't necessarily get to stop someone if they decide to suddenly bomb my house and I'm in it, unfortunately, and that's why karma exists. But I do get to choose for myself and my soul what I think, what I act, what I do, and the energy that I connect with and am broadcasting into the world or channeling through into the world. I get to choose that, and nothing can undo that. That's just a law of this universe. So they have to, they want as many souls as possible to join them so that their side wins in this war. And I honestly think they have far less than they think. I just think a lot of people are still stuck in the fear of standing out or the fear of admitting what is actually real. Both of those are really powerful fears in people. So, if people who don't really believe in this, which is crazy to say, because like you said, it's all there. They're saying it all. You don't have to believe in it. It's just is there. It's true. But they don't look at it. They don't see it. They don't want to believe in it because then their whole world would just shatter and fall apart. Their world is still the one where government is probably pretty good and there's some bad guys, but like most people are trying to do good and elections are pretty fair and the meat at the supermarket is healthy and safe for me and all these things. And it's like, no, we don't live in that world actually. But to admit that, to see the expanse of all that has been done to us over how long now is really terrifying. And then again, the people who do even see some of that, they don't want to be called crazy and they don't want to have to talk about it or hold it up or fight with people about it. So they just kind of go along. But I just think when it comes down to it, when it comes down to the actual moment of choosing, like, are you going to take this chip in your arm so that you can buy and sell things? Are you going to sacrifice your child? Here's one of the hopeful things, because I think that people will say no. And we saw this actually recently with the COVID vaccine for kids. You know, the adults went and got it for themselves, whatever your choice, I guess. It seems insane to me, but that's what they did. But when it came to vaccinating their children, it's even in the states of the highest vaccine adoption, it only is like 7% of people vaccinating their children. That is tiny. That's a tiny percentage. It's so sad still. It's so horrible for those kids, but that's not very many people that went along with it. So that type of thing gives me hope. They do a good job of creating this illusion, like, you know, there's this total control and domination and everybody's going along with it. And I just don't see that as true. So when it comes to whatever moment where people do have to make their more direct and open choice about good or evil, left or right, you know, up or down, I don't think they're going to go that way. I think they're going to choose their hearts and their souls and goodness and come back towards the light.
Yeah, I agree. The thing is, it depends how fast it comes and how the question is phrased.
That's true. And they're very crafty, so they may get a lot of people in it. There's that. Did you ever see the whole Gesara and Nisara thing with, like, supposedly with Saint Germain or whatever? Did you hear about that?
No, I don't think so.
It was, I want to say this was like 2016 that it got really big, 2017, 18 maybe. It was during the Trump times, and people were passing this around like it was going to happen soon. And it was this, what does it stand for? I don't know. It's GESARA and NESARA. One is national, one's global, but they're both about debt relief and this idea of jubilee, where all debts are just forgiven. But it goes beyond that. It's like all debts are forgiven and you get all of this money, millions. Every single human being is going to get millions of dollars all of a sudden just given to you. And this is, and the thing people said it was coming from was like this Saint Germain character is his own story or whatever. And that he way back in the Middle Ages or something, like, started accumulating wealth and kept it in a bank somewhere. Now the interest is so much that he just has enough money to give every human this much money. So that's already very unbelievable, but let's just go with it and see where they went with it. So they then said, to get the money, you just are going to sign this contract. And it's a simple contract. And this contract is like, it's like it mimics the whole ideals of like Star Trek and the like ideals of people who are really into communism, right? Not in the communism that we've seen that has murdered billions of people around the world, but the kind that's in their minds of like, oh, it's going to be great and we're all going to have what we need and we're going to share in this like utopia. And I've been there. I've had that same dream before, so I understand. So that set of ideals, this Star Trek set of ideals, this is what this contract was. It was like, you get all this money, all your debts forgiven. All you have to do is say, I'm going to create art sometimes, and I'm going to, you know, help nature to heal in some way, and I'm going to be connected with my community. There are all these things where you're like, yeah, that sounds great. And then one of them was something like, and I'm going to tie my soul to these statements and this document. And I was like, whoa, there's where you lost me. I'll take $1 billion if all I have to do is agree to make some art and like plant a garden and be nice to people. Like, hell yeah, give me the money. I'll sign that contract. But no, when you said my soul has to be involved in this, no, thank you. But the reason that reminded me of that is so many people were passing this around as though it was going to happen, and they would have done it. Therefore, you wouldn't have been excited about this idea and shared it around unless you would have done it. You would have been willing to put your soul on that. And that worries me. That's like you were saying, how fast are they going to do it? And in what way is it going to come through? And it might trick a lot of people. They might be like, hey, that's cool. They might even say, I don't even have a soul. I don't even believe in that. Yeah, I'll sign this paper, right? So you might be right about that more people could be tricked into it than I might like to admit.
Yeah, that sounds like some Blue Anon stuff or something.
Yeah, it was pretty, it wasn't perfectly enmeshed in that, but it was very close. It was in that same sort of sphere of thinking. Yeah. It's easy to get lost in the tricks and the traps. They're very, very good at what they do. They're very good at delusion.
Yeah, that's why I feel it's so scary when my family is very religious. So when I talk to them, they always say, God got this. You don't need to worry. I'm like, he may be, but they might win for 1,000 years. So I don't think God's in a hurry somewhere. So I would like to stop them before it's 2050 and the plan is set and we are fucked. So
yeah, well, what is God but this energy that's throughout the universe? And what are you but the channel for that energy? So if God were going to fight against this, how would he do it? He would do it through you. You know, when people say like God does for those who do, right? Like, yeah, that is God doing, is you doing. You are God. I mean, and I'm not saying that as in like, you are God, you know everything and you should control everything. I'm saying that as in you're this little slice of God. And that is God working in the world. And yeah, what else would it be, right? God has his warriors and his angels and his, even in that cosmology. So like, of course, God would have people doing for him. Just like there's a reason why even in the Bible, angels would come down to the humans and be like, you do this, you make the ark, or you go that way and you do this. Otherwise they would have just snapped their fingers and made it happen, right? So yeah, it's silly. It's not, they're right in a way. There is no real reason to worry, right? There's no real reason to fear. We can't stop ourselves from doing it so easily, but it would be better to stop ourselves from doing it. There's no point to it. It doesn't create anything good for us. There is a reason to be aware of it. There is a reason to see how much danger it is, how much damage it could do. And there is a reason to then act in ways that seem appropriate to you to counter that danger, create safety for yourself and others or whatever else. But there's no real reason to sit in fear of it or worry about it. You know, you are already aligned with God if that's what you choose, and nothing can change that, even if this world falls to ashes tomorrow.
Yeah. And the funny thing is they say they also, when you talked about when you invoked Jesus and the feeling you got, almost every person I talk to has that same version. And I have never really had that. So that's why I'm very skeptical, I guess, about Christianity or gods. But yeah, I think I might need to try something. You really got me thinking about what the demons have been seeing is, and that I'm actually want them to come in for some fucked up reason.
It can be curiosity, you know, like people are like, well, what is this? Like, this is crazy. I've never experienced this. And especially we live in this, again, like very materialist sort of drab world otherwise. So when we have any kind of supernatural experience, we're like, whoa, like I just saw through layers of reality and things are happening that was supposedly impossible. And so there is a curiosity involved, and I wouldn't, you know, beat up on yourself for that. But, you know, you don't even have to believe. Well, like I said, you can actually call on Jesus whether you believe in him or not. I didn't believe in that moment that I called on him, and it still just cleared the darkness away instantly and filled me with light. So that you can do it without believing. But I also, some people are just very skeptical of any outside entity. They're like, well, what if that thing calls itself Jesus, but it's actually just like another form of something that's like sucking my energy, or what is it taking from me, or why does it even, you know, what is it? And I understand that level of skepticism too. So I always say to people, you don't have to even go through a middleman. You can just call on, you can even leave the word God out of it. What do you think is the primary component of the entire universe? That's what I call God. Right? What do you think it is? It doesn't even matter. I call it ether. I call it spirit. I call it soul. I call it God. I call it source. It's all the same thing to me. It doesn't matter what word we put on it. So whatever you feel about that, it's clearly creative. It's clearly ever present. It is literally in every molecule, everything that ever existed and everything. Call on that. Right? And calling it directly to you. You don't need a middleman to do that. You don't need a Jesus or an angel or whatever. They're really good at it. They'll help if you want, but you don't have to call on them. You could just say whatever word you want to use. Oh God, or oh ether, or oh spirit, as long as you know what you mean, right? You don't want to call things that you don't have an clear intention and image, and you know what I mean? You don't want to just call random stuff, but if you know what that is to you and how you perceive it and what it feels like to you, you can just call on that. God is just like a shortcut word for me, you know? It's not like a guy sitting somewhere.
I have used, like in the past 2 years, if I really asked for something, I have asked Enki, and I really don't know him. I just know it's Anunnaki god.
Yeah, he's the one who saved humanity from Enlil.
yeah, he's supposed to be the good guy.
The good one.
And stuff have happened. So I'm like, that's interesting.
Well, this is the danger, the blessing and the curse of calling on anything is like it comes when you call it. So this is also true for people who are still alive. You can say, oh, the soul, heart, mind, and body of so-and-so come. They're there. They're there now. They're not, they may not be consciously aware of it, but they probably even might be that, depending on how close you are. We've all experienced this when someone thinks to call us and then we think about them and then the phone rings and it's them. It's because they called us first in their heart. They thought, I'm going to call Lindsay, and I felt it and go, oh, I really love, Shauna. And then she calls, right? Because that's what's happening. When you think of someone, you call on them or you invoke them, you literally are, and they always come. And it's true with all those beings too. And that's why it can be dangerous, because you can call anything. Do you really want to? I don't know. Like you said, he's supposed to be the good guy? Is he? I don't know. But you can find out, you can use your discernment and you can assess different beings and energies and people and things. So we all have that skill too.
Yeah, I should probably stop gambling though and go to the
It might
things.
be.
I know
Might
what
be
is.
better.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So before we go, how do you see the plans they have set up for us? It's the end date is 2050. Then everything should be in place. Do you think if they go as fast as they are doing at this moment, you see you can't buy a car in 2 years in different places and whatever they are trying to do you think they can hold like the hands before the eyes to the people? I don't see how they're not going to wake up and say no. So
I hope that's true. Like you say, I hope they wake up and say no. And I really, again, like I say, I think there's certain lines that once crossed, people finally stand up. So one we saw recently was their children. In some ways, not for everyone. Some people just throw their kids into a tranny park and, like inject them with anything and call it good. But for most people, turns out children are a line where they say, no, not injecting my kid, right? So depending on what it is, I think more and more people will wake up and say, not this, not anymore. They may do a better and better job of making it seem like everyone agrees and is going along too. So that can be a danger where we fall into that delusion of thinking everybody's going along when really most people might be resisting and we're just not shown it. We're not allowed to see it. So we all have to do a good job of holding that in our hearts and our minds, that we know what we're creating and it isn't that, right? We know we're creating the other world and the other timeline where things don't necessarily go that way, where everyone just goes along with it. And if we have a critical mass of people who are going in the other direction, it doesn't matter what the pedophile satanic elites want or what they do, because they need people to pull it off too. They need permission granted. They need the people to agree with it and build it and stick with it with them. So if we have enough people who just don't, then it won't happen. But I'll share this as quickly as possible. This is before I was more openly the spiritual healer that I am now. I was a little bit, people who knew me knew, but I didn't really tell people about it too much. And I definitely didn't go to spiritual fairs. But one day there's just the stars aligned and it was so random and synchronistic that I just ended up at this spiritual fair. And I was even thinking, this is so stupid. Why am I even going to this? This is the place where all the fake people are and all the shallow people who say they're spiritual, but they're actually assholes. That's where they all are. So why am I going here? But I just went anyway. And when I walked in, I saw this book that this guy had on his in his booth. And I said, that's so weird. I had a dream about that book last night. I've never seen this book in my life, but I just saw it and remembered that it was in my dream. And he goes, oh, it's for you, and handed it to me. And I said, well, how much money is it? And he said, no, it's for you. I brought it here for you. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I was told to bring it for someone and it's you. And I was like, oh, well, that's crazy. Like, this is awesome and crazy. And that guy said, come to my talk later. I'm giving a talk. Lots of other crazy things happened. Eventually, it was the time for his talk. So I went to this little side room where he was giving his talk. And he was giving his talk about something. And I don't even know. It doesn't matter. Partway through the talk, I saw a light ball come through the wall. And I see things like this a lot. And sometimes other people can see them and sometimes they can't. It was very unclear to me whether anyone in that room saw it. I don't think they did, but anyways, it came through the wall and I was like, whoa, there's one here. Like, why is it here? It doesn't usually happen to me in front of other people, really, especially not a group of strangers. So I was kind of like, what's about to happen? This ball of light landed in this man's head, same guy. And he shook and he developed a completely different manner. And he started talking about how dark times were going to get starting in 2022. This was in like 2018 or something. 2022 times are going to be very dark. The darkness will have come upon the world and times will get darker and darker and harder and worse and worse. But do not fear, he said, for I will always be with you. I am always with you. The light is always within you and the darkness will not win. He said by 2033, the darkness will have passed and this Christ consciousness will have returned to earth and I will be with you again. And then the light popped out of his head and left, and he shook his head and he said, that wasn't me, that was Sai Baba. And I don't know who Sai Baba is on this time at all. I have no idea what's even going on. But the 2022 was right on, wasn't it? And the 2033 probably will be too. And so even if things seem really hopeless in the next 11 years, I personally have been given that and so many other signs and symbols that this won't actually matter in the long run, and that we won't lose in the long run, and that we do actually win, and that therefore we've already won. So it's not to say it will be very easy, but the more we keep that in our hearts and our minds, that we are of the light and for the light, and that we're heading towards that, I think the better it will be for all of us. So Sai Baba turns out to be a pretty cool guy also, if anyone wants to look into him.
That's so awesome.
It's pretty cool.
It's not too often I can end a podcast with some really good message. So yeah, that's let's hope that comes through.
Fingers crossed.
Plug your stuff and tell me where people can find you.
People can go to rogueways.org, which is the best place to see everything I do. And there is a lot of it. I lead meditations twice a week that you can join up with. We're doing that event this coming Saturday, the 18th, if this gets out before then. And if not, we do them every equinox and solstice. They're super powerful healing and upliftment for you. And I also do the show, Rogue Ways, Sunday and Tuesday nights live at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. And also on Thursdays, I do my show Middle Path at 7 p.m. Mountain Time live as well. I have a bunch of books. Some of them are channeled from source. So if you want to get messages from that light into your life, they're really great. One is especially nice for most people. It's called All Endings Are Beginnings. And you can ask it a question actually and flip to a page and get your answer, which is the best way to use it. So I love that book. And if you buy it from the site at rogueways.org, then I do a little inscription for you channeled as well from your guides and allies. So that's the best way to buy it, although you can also find it on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. And I think that's probably enough. I always forget what else to plug, but that'll do it.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, send me the links and I will put them in this description. I will try my best to put it up before Sunday. I have a busy day tomorrow, so I might not manage.
No worries.
Most of my listeners are here in Finland, so they are, well, it's online, so they could join. But yeah,
they could join, and it's recorded too. But yeah, it's either way. They maybe want to come next time. But thanks for having me, Ronny. It's been really fun to talk to you.
Yeah, the same. Nice to meet you. Have a great day and nice weekend. Bye.